In today's video, should you use machines or free weights to build the most muscle? Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Ravella from ProPhysique.com, and today's video comes to you from my Instagram direct message. So what we're going to talk about is using free weights versus using machines. And if you'd like to send me a question, you can send it to my Instagram direct message. And if you'd like this type of content around putting on muscle, losing body fat, and having the physique of your dreams, hit subscribe. That's what I love to do here. So let's talk about today's question. Can you maybe do a video about machines versus free weights? Your thoughts on what would be really interesting. So this is something that as soon as we get started in the iron game, putting on muscle, we notice there's two very different approaches. There's these rusty dumbbells. Well, at least they were rusty dumbbells back when I started training at like these YMCAs and Gold's gyms when I was young. And like a rack of dumbbells and barbells in the corner. And then you've got these pretty shiny Nautilus machines and hammer strength machines. And you want to know which is the best for making progress. And I've actually got some research that I'm going to explain a little bit around what they did with that. And then I also want to give you a little bit of my personal experience and anecdote. And I think the first and most important thing to understand about free weights versus machines is the specificity involved. So the first study I want to mention is one where they actually did 8 weeks and they measured a vertical leap, and they had the one group do a squat and the one group do a leg press for 8 weeks. And when they ended the study, the group that did the squat, well, guess what? They increased their vertical leap, and the group that did the leg press did not. And so why does that matter? Well, so if it comes down to what your goals are, if it comes down to, okay, I want to increase my vertical leap or I want to increase my performance in a sport, it's going to be best to do movements that are specific to that sport. So why would a squat be better than a leg press? Well, in a squat, you are actually squatting down and standing back up. This is very specific to what a jumper would look like, getting in a jump position. Sitting down on a position where your feet are above you and pushing the weight away from you, that does not correlate with having your feet on the ground and being explosive very much at all. Okay, so you can see why of these two groups, the squat was better. So when would the squat be worse? Well, I can tell you from my own personal experience, I have terrible leverages for the squat. For a squat to be successful, the bar has to stay over the center of your foot. Well, we have a lot of different parts of our body that need to move basically out of the way, okay? We have our torso, we have our upper leg and our lower leg, all that are going to be moving in different fashions to get down to full depth for a squat and back up. And if you don't have good leverages, well, then a squat can be very difficult. Now that study would have been a lot more interesting, I think, had they used two forms of squat. Let's say a squat with a barbell and a squat on, say, something like a Smith machine or maybe a hack squat, where it's a lot more similar, okay? When it comes down to putting on muscle, the thing we need to focus on is the tension that is created, okay? The mechanical tension that is created is what is causing the stress that builds our muscle. You can do this with machines or free weights. So I fully believe in using both and using a combination of both to reach my goals. The longer I've trained, the one thing I've realized is that at certain times, machines make a lot more sense. The one thing that is very difficult about free weights oftentimes is just that you're supporting yourself while you're holding them, okay? So your core is often getting engaged. If you're doing a standing dumbbell curl, you might have some strains in your lower back that make that difficult versus sitting in a machine that allows you to do a bicep curl and only puts tension on the single joint that's being used, right? The single muscle that's being used. A standing barbell curl, again, if you're holding the weight in front of you, every time you bring the weight up, you're using your core to brace and hold you up. You're standing on your feet and legs. And so you're actually engaging a lot more muscles. So what I really like about free weights is that as you fatigue, you can actually switch then to a machine setup. There's also some movements that, depending on our leverages, I have very long arms at 6'3". It's very difficult for me to get good at something like a bent over barbell row, okay? When I bend over to pick up a barbell and row it, I am then supporting all my upper body with my core. And this sometimes is detrimental. When you're training multiple days per week, it's important to pay attention to fatigue. I don't want to limit the progress that my athletes make or that I make because I'm limiting how much weight I can use due to potential injuries or risk of injury, okay? And after training for over 25 years, I've had plenty of injuries. And so I tend to focus on movements that are free weight that do not give me problems. And I tend to focus on, machines when I think that it could potentially save me some pain and some aches. But ultimately, it comes down to the specifics of what your goals are. Can you build just as much muscle with machines? Absolutely. However, it's not very specific. For example, if you're going to compete in a competition that involves things like movement, where it's powerlifting or CrossFit, you need to train specifically for that. Okay, if your only goal is muscle hypertrophy, you can certainly put on plenty of muscle using machines. One of the big disadvantages of machines is that they're usually singular, maybe dual in purpose. And here's what I mean by that. You can go and buy, let's say, a hammer strength chest press. It might cost you $2,000 to $3,000. It does one thing. You load weights, you can do a chest press. However, if you have a bench and you have some barbells or some dumbbells, you can do a lot more movements on there, okay? You can do a myriad of chest exercises. You can also do back exercises. You can do some shoulder exercises. You can do some arm exercises. You can do some leg exercises. So you see, there's a lot more variety when it comes to free weights because you're not in a fixed position for the movement. So I think the most important thing to consider here is, what are your goals? If I had to design a program that would suit a lot of people, and if you're looking for a free training program and a free nutrition program, I have a great free beginner's guide that we wrote specifically for this purpose, so you start to understand. I think there's certainly value in using some free weights. I'll put the link for that free program down below, by the way. There's certainly value in using free weights. I love the feeling of having dumbbells and barbells and things in my hand, but there's also a great benefit to having something that puts you in a very safe position. If you don't have a spotter, you can use a machine, you can try to go a little bit heavier. These are some of the values that I find in training with machines. The thing I love about free weights is just what I said. It's the variety, and it's also the freedom, the range of motion. Some machines are not going to work well with everyone's angles and everyone's joints, okay? Sometimes I'll say, let me try a leg press at different gyms, and I find that some of them are fixed in such a manner which they just don't feel good biomechanically for me. Versus sometimes I'll get on a different kind of a leg press or a hack squat, and I'm like, wow, this feels like I'm just moving effortlessly. Sometimes I'll get on a machine and I'll feel like, wow, this is moving effortlessly. And that's exactly what you want. You want a machine that kind of suits you, that feels good. My favorite type of training is when I can really focus on exerting myself and not focusing so much on how my form is, okay? Getting into a good rhythm. Now, part of that comes down to practice because our muscle fires in a way that is set up by our repetitions, okay? Have you gone through this? Think of lifting as a skill, okay? You don't get good at throwing a baseball or hitting a golf ball just by doing it once. You do it over and over so many times that you're no longer so much thinking about your form, you're just executing. The same thing comes with weightlifting. So if you get into a situation where you get really good in a movement, you're no longer thinking about, okay, I'm benching, am I tucking my elbows, am I arching? You just get into a rhythm where you can focus on an explosive movement that is going to benefit your muscle growth. Now, I don't think either one should be eliminated. I think there is a time and a place for both free weights and machines. But ultimately it comes down to, what do you have access to, especially at a time like this. Getting in and training, for some people, I think a lot of people, myself included, have found that by getting back to the basics with free weights, I haven't been in the gym, I've just been using what I have here. I've really found enjoyment in making sure that my form is good and just getting back to my roots of using those rusty old weights that I first discovered back in 1991, 92, a long time ago. All right, guys, that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you enjoyed the content, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.